This week's edition of the Loud House versus the Casagrandes, it's gonna be about Feast or Family versus Misstep. Mainly the fact that both episodes centers around family traditions, regardless if Feast or Family is centering around Luann's relationship with Linsaw. These two episodes aren't really the best episodes, but they're still decent enough to sit through, especially since that for an episode involving the Lighthouse from Season 4, it's really unexpected to do a comparison of that episode towards an episode from the Casagrandes, considering that both episodes are months apart from each other in 2020. And with the Loud House fandom decreasing due to the bad episodes from Season 4, not to mention the character derailments, 2020 wasn't really a good year for the Loud House, regardless of its spin-off, the Casagrandes airing episodes along with the premiere of its second season later that year. But to be honest with you, this episode, regardless if it's not really one of the best episodes, I can easily say that it's somewhat suitable for a further development of newer relationships, mainly Luann and Linsaw. After Luann couldn't take it when it comes to her cooking classes, her father thought otherwise. Linsaw gives Luann advices of how cooking is a good thing, similar to her talents of making jokes and making puns, or just be a comedic for short. And then towards the second half of the episode, well, he takes it way too far. Luann eventually reaches her limit, especially since that Linsaw just sent Mr. Coconuts to storage. In Misstep, Frida is really excited to do her family tradition with Carlota when it comes to Mexican dancing, but unfortunately, Carlota completely injured her arm due to Ryan skating in the apartment. And this leads to Ryan taking the wall in order to cheer Frida up for family traditions. Unfortunately, Ryan soon regret it, just like Carlota and her mother, considering that they just don't want to be part of the family tradition because they just can't stand it, unlike Frida. So, the similarities is that Luann and Ryan can't be able to stand the activities that they're not into completely. In the beginning of Feast or Family, Luann thinks that cooking is boring, and then throughout the episode, she continues to enjoy it thanks to the assistance of her father. And to be honest with you, the major difference between Luann and Ryan is that Luann actually enjoys cooking, but too much for the excitement of her father. But considering that Ryan isn't into any of the stuff that Frida does when it comes to family traditions, this is where we get to see the development involving Frida, not to mention that this is the first time I'm talking about Frida. All I can say is that as much as that she may be overdramatic at times, it doesn't change the fact that her motivations in this episode goes to show that she really cares about the Casagrandes when it comes to family traditions. Granted, it's one thing that Linsaw's motivations is just as important as Frida's when it comes to someone else taking over his restaurant. But to be honest with you, since that Frida has been doing this year after year, which regardless if it's not profitable compared to Linsaw getting money from his restaurant, it doesn't change the fact that Frida has passion when it comes to family traditions. Granted, Frida may have gone overboard, but at the same time, they were auditioning, while Linsaw, on the other hand, just goes over his head on what his future would be like if Luann takes over his restaurant. Believe me when I say this, the moments where we get to see him in the second half really shows that he just looks into the future way too early. Though if I'm gonna be perfectly honest for how the other characters were portrayed in Misstep, mainly Carlota and Maria faking their injuries, I honestly felt like that their situation could possibly be worse in a different scenario compared to Luann in Feast or Family. The thing is, Luann just wanted Lin So to be happy, and while Wang Yan and the other characters were trying to make Frida happy, her outburst towards the end of Feast of Family goes to show that she just couldn't take it, but at the same time, it was mostly her frustrations that got the better of her. It just goes to show that she only had an outburst because she just couldn't be able to take it anymore, while the characters from Misstep were faking injuries. And I honestly think that the reason why Frida was a lot more tolerable compared to Lin So is that she didn't went out of her way to prevent her family members to do any activities in order to do family traditions. Considering that she does this yearly, Lin So just thinks about the future then yearly. And for me personally, it just goes to show that Frida only thinks about the audition, especially dancing in front of so many people, to maintain the joy, which is from her own words that she kept saying to Ryan, Carlota, and Maria. And since that Ryan, Carlota, and Maria ended up dancing with Frida towards the end of the episode, just goes to show that this episode is slightly better than Feast or Family. I'm not saying that Feast or Family is something you should miss out on, considering that it was around the time where the Loud House was taking a turn for the worst. But you have to admit, it wasn't enough to keep fans invested in the series. It just goes to show that even the good episodes can't overweigh the negativity of the terrible episodes in Season 4. Believe me when I say this. When I see so many people bashing on Season 4 episodes when it comes to bad ones really badly, it just goes to show that nowadays it's difficult to take this show seriously, especially with the earlier seasons' messages being retconned due to later entries of the series. At times, newcomers who can't stand bad episodes will probably look into this episode as a passable episode, but at the same time, it won't change the fact that the other bad episodes aren't going to make them satisfied completely when it comes to the good episodes of Season 4. Let me tell you, it's difficult to look into this episode completely when it comes to the other bad episodes. And I honestly think that the reason why Misstep is slightly better is the fact that regardless if the characters are just most likely the same as the Loud House characters, it didn't change the fact that they didn't had a lot of character developments. Granted, I would say that Ryan had some of those, but like I said, I'm gonna be saving those much later whenever I get into the bad episodes of the Casagrandes. Speaking of Ryan, the only thing I would say about her in Misstep is the fact that she had no choice other than just making Frida happy, similar to Luann in Feast or Family. And the difference is that it's a family tradition. No matter what she does, even if she said no, Frida would be extremely depressed that a year passed with no family tradition involving Mexican dancing will probably devastate her to the extremes. And to give her credit, the fact that the spinoff centers around her being in Great Lake City, adjusting on what her life is, unlike in Royal Woods, really goes to show that she's just basically living the dream of a huge city. And the fact that they're making Great Lake City a huge deal goes to show that the development that Ryan got is that her environment is completely different than Lincoln's environment back at Royal Woods. Granted, there may be characters that are similar, but at the same time, their tweaks somewhat make them unique for their own characters compared to the Loud House's secondary characters. If I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, I really felt like that these differences somewhat redeems the Casagrandes slightly more if you look into these topics. Granted, I can understand that you can't be able to get into this show completely similar to the Loud House, but at the same time, like I said before numerous of times, it's worth giving the Casagrandes a shot, regardless if it came to an end last year. The only complaints that people have with Feast or Family is the fact that Lincoln isn't taking Luann's spot when it comes to cooking. And for me personally, considering that I understand that Lincoln has been underused in Season 4, I have to admit that this isn't really that big of a deal, knowing full well that having Luann taking the place in order to cook with Lin Saw isn't really a bad idea. And considering that there was already a Season 2 episode centering around Lincoln and Lin Saw, along with the fact that in Forks and Knives Out, well, they team up together against Ryan and Rosa, it's somewhat of a win-win for people who enjoyed Lincoln's relationship with his father in those episodes. Don't believe me? The same thing happened in Seasons 5, Dad's Reputation, when Yuna is the center focus of Lin Saw's episodes. Believe me when I say this, it's not like that if you have different characters be in the role of Lincoln Lounge when it comes to their relationships with their parents, because it just goes to show that there are other characters other than Lincoln having the spotlight. Granted, it's one thing that Lincoln didn't get any attention in Season 4, but at least it makes up for it when it comes to Season 5, despite the bad episodes. Granted, I understand that longtime fans should get used to these ideals, but when it comes to newcomers, you need to understand that even if you do not like all the characters, especially the Loud siblings, just understand that they're not background characters, and they're definitely not props. But with that being said, Misstep is the superior episode over the Loud House episode, which is why I'm giving Misstep a 7 out of 10, while Feast or Family gets a 6.75 out of 10.